A young girl, just 16 years old, walked out of school one afternoon and never returned. She left during lunch, unaware that she was stepping into the last moments of her life. The last person to see her. A man she should have been able to trust. This is the tragic story of Iyana Sawyer, a bright teenager whose life was stolen in an act of unimaginable betrayal. She carried a child, a future, a hope. But in December 2018, someone ripped it all away. No goodbyes, just a painful silence that stretched on for years. What really happened to Iyana that day? How does someone vanish without a trace? And how did a jury convict a man of murder when there was nobody to prove it? Before we continue, we have a small favor to ask you. Please take a second to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. To everyone who supports this channel, we sincerely appreciate you. December 19th, 2018 started just like every other day. No one had an inkling of the tragedy it held. A Wednesday, just a few days before Christmas, students at Terry Parker High School in Jacksonville, Florida, were in their final days of the semester, ready for the holiday break. Iyana arrived at school like any other morning, but her routine took a sharp turn. She slipped out of the building during her lunch break and headed toward a junkyard, a place that held no reason for a teenage girl to visit. But for Iyana, there was one reason. Her uncle, Jonathan Quiles, worked there. That was the last time anyone saw her. As much as we are not aware if Quiles was expecting his niece on this fateful day or not, but one thing was clear enough. He had a mission. When Iyana failed to return home that evening, her family's concern turned into fear. She wasn't the type to disappear without a word. They called her phone. No answer. They sent messages. No response. As night stretched into morning, worry hardened into panic. The police launched an investigation, but their search hit a wall. No obvious clues, no known witnesses, no trace of Iyana anywhere. But when detectives started asking questions, the twisted and horrifying truth started coming out. Family members stepped forward, revealing the unthinkable. Jonathan had been abusing Iyana, and it wasn't just her. Others in the family carried the same painful secrets. They suspected this disgusting act of his had something to do with the teenager's disappearance. Who would have thought that an uncle would be the first suspect for a poor child? But a man who is capable of molesting girls is capable of anything. After disclosing their thoughts to the police, the investigative team slung into action. No evidence, but it was a strong lead, so he had to tell his story. At first, Quiles sat calmly through questioning, brushing off accusations with forced indifference. He denied everything. He shrugged off concerns. But when detectives pushed harder, his story shifted. He tripped over his own words. Phone records placed him in contact with Iyana that day. His twisted explanations exposed the lies underneath. Then, investigators pieced together his story and suspected the teenager's disappearance was Quiles' attempt to bury the truth. The truth that he might have been the father to Iyana's unborn child. Did the girl confront him or tell him she was done keeping his secrets? So many questions and assumptions piled up with no evidence to back up these suspicions or answer the questions. For weeks, her family clung to hope. Maybe she was out there. Maybe she would walk through the door. Maybe this was all a terrible misunderstanding. But then, everything changed when Jonathan's brother, Joseph Quiles, broke the silence. He came forward with a confession that shattered any last hope. According to Joseph, Jonathan had admitted to the murder. He had tried to strangle her, but lost control, so he pulled out a gun and shot her in the chest instead. He had dumped her body in a trash container, sending it straight to the landfill, lost beneath thousands of tons of garbage, never to be recovered. That confession cracked the case wide open. But one problem remained. Proving murder without a body would be an uphill battle. For months, investigators searched the landfill, hoping to recover Iyana's remains. Crews worked tirelessly, combing through endless piles of waste, sifting through filth, hoping for even the smallest piece of evidence. But as days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, reality set in. She was gone, hidden in a grave of refuse. Without a body, prosecutors knew their case wouldn't be easy. Defense attorneys would argue that she wasn't dead, just missing. That maybe she ran away, that without physical proof, there could be no murder. At trial, Quayle's defense team fought to plant doubt. They argued there was no proof of death. They even pushed to ban the word victim in court, as if erasing a term could erase a crime. Quayles stood there mute, waiting for some odd miracle to happen, even though he replayed what he did to his niece on that day in his mind. Anyways, everyone always pleads for mercy, even when they are not merciful themselves. Well, none of such miracles was about to take place because the prosecution came prepared. They predicted the case the defense counsel will bring forward, so they presented the evidence, phone records, shifting stories, and the disturbing patterns of abuse. They called in the witnesses, family members who had endured Quayle's abuse firsthand. And then, his own brother's testimony, recounting the confession in brutal detail. The jury listened, and for 6 days, they sat through the arguments. They heard the evidence. They watched as Iyana's family sat in silent grief, holding on to each other, waiting for the justice they had fought so hard for. Then, after just 1 hour of deliberation, they delivered their verdict. Guilty on all charges. Jonathan Quayles was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For the prosecution, it was a victory. For Iyana's family, it was justice. But was it enough? Justice still felt like a hollow victory. Her body remained lost. Her unborn child never had a chance to live. And her family stood in the wreckage of unanswered questions and unbearable grief. There was no closure, no burial, no place to visit and grieve, just memories, haunting and inescapable. The fact that a man the little girl considered family perpetuated this act hurt the more. Abusing her was not enough. He had to kill her with no sympathy for his niece, nor the baby growing inside of her. This case leaves a void that can never truly be filled. Iyana wasn't just a teenager. She was a daughter, a sister, a young mother-to-be. She carried dreams, a future, a life stolen in a way no one should ever have to endure. Her family never got to say goodbye. They never got to hold her child. They never got to watch her grow into adulthood. Instead, they were left with pain, memories, and an emptiness that lingers. And then there's the question of justice. Jonathan Quayles sits behind bars, serving life without parole. But is that enough? Does a prison sentence balance the scales for a life stolen? What about the years of abuse, the trauma he inflicted, the family he shattered? How does a single conviction make up for all of that? Personally, I will say no. But what more can be done to him to make him pay for what he did? Sincerely, I don't know. However, I am glad that one molester has been removed from society. For Iyana's family, there is no real justice. No sentence will bring her back. No punishment will erase the horror of what happened. The only thing they can do now is remember her, keep her name alive, fight for other girls like her, so no one else has to suffer the same fate. Because this story isn't just about one girl. It's about every girl who has been failed by those meant to protect them. Every child who has suffered in silence. Every victim whose story was ignored until it was too late. It's about demanding better, holding predators accountable, refusing to let monsters hide behind family ties. Iyana's story is heartbreaking. It's unfair, it's cruel, but it is not forgotten, and it never will be. What do you think? Was justice fully served in this case? Should more have been done? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this story compelling, hit the like button and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our stories like this one. Your support helps us continue to share these stories. Thank you for watching.